Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. So today we are going through chapter 4, verses 33 to 42. The format, I'm going to play the audio, followed by Ambika reading it, followed by Brian reading it. Then we will start delving into it. We're going to go verse by verse. So we'll read a verse. First, I'm going to invite people who have been studying Gita for a long time to give their comments. And then I'm going to open it up for everybody asking questions. Try to stay close to the text. We're trying to understand the text in its own terms. Just try to focus on that. This is the whole series. We're studying the Bible, we're studying the Bhagavad Gita, and we're studying the Tao. These works are written in a different culture at a different time. What we're trying to do is that we're trying to commune with that. That is the most value we can get from it. So let's do this in that spirit. Let me go ahead and start playing.
Brahmano mukhe karmajan vidhitan sarvan evam jnatva vimoksyase shreyan dravyamayad yajna jnana yajna parantapa sarva karma khilam partha jnane parisamapyate tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya Upadekshyanti te jnanam jnaninastatvadarshinaha yajñātvāna punarmoham evam yasyasi pandava yena bhūtānyasheshena drakṣasyātmanyatho mayi api chedasi pāpebhyas sarvebhyah pāpavrittamaha sarvam jnānaplavenaiva vrijinam santarishyasi यथैधांसि समिद्धोऽग्निर्भस्मसात् कुरुतेऽर्जुन ज्ञानाग्निः सर्वकर्माणि भस्मसात् कुरुते तथा न हि ज्ञानेन सदृशं पवित्रं इह विद्यते त्वत्सयै योगसंसिद्धः कालेनात्मनि विन्दति श्रद्धावान् लभते ज्ञानं तत्परः संयतेन्द्रियः ज्ञानं लब्ध्वा परां शान्तिम् अचिरेणाधिगच्छति अज्ञश्चाश्रद्धधानश्च संशयात्मा विनश्यति नायं लोकस्ति न परो न सुखं संशयात्मनः योगसन्न्यस्य कर्माणं ज्ञानसञ्छिन्न संशयम् आत्मवन्तं न कर्माणि निबध्नन्ति धनञ्जय तस्मादज्ञानसम्भूतं हृत्स्थं ज्ञानासिनात्मनः चित्त्वैनं संशयं योगम् आतिष्ठोत्तिष्ठ भारत चित्त्वैनं संशयं योगम् आतिष्ठोत्तिष्ठ भारत ॐ तत्सत् इति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे ज्ञानकर्मसन्न्यासयोगो नाम चतुर्थोऽध्यायः।
Right. Now we're going to have Ambika read it, followed by Brian. Ambika, go ahead, 33 to 42, please. Can you please unmute yourself?
We're doing one shloka at a time, right?
No, we are reading, currently you're going to read from 33 to 42.
Okay.
Brian is also going to do the same. After that, we're going to go one shloka at a time. Go ahead.
The sacrifice of knowledge, O Parantapa, is superior to material sacrifice. All work in its totality O Partha, finds its culmination and completeness in knowledge. Obtain that knowledge by prostrating at the feet of those who are in possession of it, the seers of essential principles. By inquiring and by service, they will initiate thee in that knowledge. Having that knowledge, thou shalt not return into delusion at all, O Pandava. By that thou shalt see all existences without exception in the self, then in me. Even if thou art the greatest doer of sin beyond all sinners, thou shalt cross over all the crookedness of evil in the ship of knowledge. As a fire kindled turns to ashes its fuel, so too, O Arjuna, the fire of knowledge turns all works to ashes. There is nothing in the world to compare with knowledge in purity. The man who is perfected by yoga finds it of himself in the self by the course of time. The man of faith, with control over mind and senses, his heart and soul in that, attains to knowledge. Having attained knowledge, he at once obtains supreme peace. He at once obtains supreme peace. The ignorant who has not faith, the soul of doubt goeth to perdition. Neither this world, nor the supreme world, nor any happiness is for the soul full of doubts. One who has torn all doubt by knowledge, O Dhananjaya, and by yoga has given up all works, who is possessed of the self, him the works do not bind. Therefore, having cut asunder with the sword of knowledge this doubt, born of ignorance, lingering in the heart, stay in yoga. Arise, O Bharata. Om Tat Sat.
Thank you. That was the translation of Sri Aurobindo. Brian, what translation are you reading? And then please go ahead and read chapter 4, verses 33 to 42.
This is a translation that by Christopher Isherwood and his Swami.
Got it.
I gotta sit up. The form of worship which consists in contemplating Brahman is superior to ritualistic worship with material offerings. The reward of all action is to be found in enlightenment. Those illuminated souls who have realized the truth will instruct you in the knowledge of Brahman if you will prostrate yourself before them, question them, and serve them as a disciple. When you have reached enlightenment, ignorance will delude you no longer. In the light of that knowledge, you will see the entire creation within your own Atman and in me. And though you were the foulest of sinners, this knowledge alone would carry you like a raft over all your sins. The blazing fire turns wood to ashes. The fire of knowledge turns all karmas to ashes. O earth, on earth there is no purifier as great as this knowledge. When a man is made perfect in yoga, he knows its truth within his heart. The man of faith, whose heart is devoted, whose senses are mastered, he finds Brahman. Enlightened, he passes at once to the highest, the peace beyond passion. The ignorant, the faithless, the doubter goes to his destruction. How shall he enjoy this world or the next, or any happiness? When a man can act without desire through practice of yoga, when his doubts are torn to shreds because he knows Brahman, when his heart is poised in the being of the Atman, no bounds can bind him. Still, I can see it, a doubt that lingers deep in your heart, brought forth by delusion. You doubt the truth of the living Atman. Where is your sword, discrimination? Draw it and slash delusion to pieces. Then arise, O son of Bharata. Take your stand in karma yoga.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Brian, could you reread just verse 33? Now we're going verse by verse. If you could read 33, and then Ambika will read 33. And then I'm going to go to Yogeshwar for his comments on verse 33. And then I'm going to open it up for anybody, first people who are familiar with this text, to talk about what they understand from this verse. And then I'm going to open it up for everybody. Brian, if you could read verse 33, please.
The form of worship which consists in contemplating Brahman is superior to ritualistic worship with material offerings. The reward of all action is to be found in enlightenment.
Thank you.
The sacrifice,
Go ahead, please.
the sacrifice of knowledge, O Parantapa, is superior to material sacrifice. All work in its totality, O Partha, finds its culmination and completeness in knowledge.
Okay, I'm going to read one more translation. This one is by Swami Mukundananda. O subduer of enemies, sacrifice performed in knowledge is superior to any mechanical material sacrifice. After all, O Parth, all sacrifices of work culminate in knowledge. Next, I'm going to go to Yogeshwar. Yogeshwar, can you talk a little bit about what this verse means?
Yes. The yajna of knowledge is greater than the yajna that we do with materials. Yes.
Yes.
And even what we do with the material world, what it should lead to is enlightenment. And that is what we should be wishing for in the future. We should always be wanting that. So saying that even though you're doing karma, even though you're doing the karma yajna, because you're not ready for the jnana yajna, or you don't really understand the jnana yajna, even though you're doing the karma yajna, you should actually be wishing for the enlightenment, the spark in your heart, or where you are seated in the middle and everything, your thoughts and your body is just separate from you, and you can know that all this is separate and I am in the middle. I am seated in the middle. So that knowing is the greatest thing. And in some translations, in some commentaries, I've read that here Gyan is only meant for enlightenment, and translating it to pure knowledge, like the knowledge we understand in English, for example, like maybe reading many books, or just knowing so much about the world, or knowing how far planets are from the earth, or all that knowing, not that knowing, yeah, but the knowing of enlightenment, the knowing of the sthit prajna is the main thing here.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Yogeshwar. That's the last point is critical. It's your knowledge of Atma and Brahman. It is the knowledge of the core of you and all of the universe, all of God. I'm going to read one more commentary by Swami Mukundanand, and then I'm going to first invite anybody who is familiar with Bhagavad Gita to talk about verse 33. And then I'm going to open it up for everybody. This commentary says, Sri Krishna now puts the previously described sacrifices in proper perspective. He tells Arjuna that it is good to do physical acts of devotion, but not good enough. Ritualistic ceremonies, fasts, mantra chants, holy pilgrimage are all fine, but if they are not performed with knowledge, they remain mere physical activities. Such mechanical activities are better than not doing anything at all, but they are not sufficient to purify the mind. Many people chant God's name on rosary beads, sit in recitation of scriptures, visit holy places, and perform worship ceremonies with the belief that physical act itself is sufficient for liberating them from material bondage. However, Sant Kabir says very eloquently, "O spiritual aspirant, you have been rotating the chanting beads for many ages, but the mischief of mind has not ceased. Now put those beads down and rotate the beads of your mind." It's another quotation from another thinker. The cause of bondage and liberation is the mind. Whatever form of devotion you do, engage the mind in meditating upon God. Devotional sentiments are nourished by the cultivation of knowledge. Similarly, cultivating knowledge of God and our relationship with Him nurtures devotional sentiments. Hence, Sri Krishna explains to Arjuna that sacrifices performed in knowledge are superior to sacrifices of material things. Okay. Now, I'm going to open it up for any thoughts that anybody has on this verse. Try to focus on the verse itself. You feel free to ask any questions. Go ahead and type an exclamation mark or raise your hand in Zoom if you'd like to comment. Evanik.
Yeah, I have a question. When you were saying the part about rotate the beads of the mind, and then you were saying, I was trying to write it down, cultivate the mind of God, or it was something of that nature. I didn't get it all down.
Sure.
I was wondering if you could go over it again.
Sure. So what he's saying is that, oh, spiritual aspirant, you have been rotating the chanting beads for many ages. So people are taking physical actions to represent spiritual development. They are performing rituals, physical action of rituals that are supposed to represent the spiritual. But he's saying that's not enough. Put these rituals down. This is the same thing that Jesus talks about again and again throughout the Bible. You know, leave rituals, go back to the spirit, go back to knowledge. That is the point. And then he's talking the point about focusing on God. This is a point that Yogeshwar is making, that when word knowledge is used in the Western context, it is mostly people think about knowledge of the material world. What the kind of knowledge he's talking about is knowledge of God, of knowledge of your Atma. So this is about, he's saying, focus your mind on Atma, the core of you, the spirit, God. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, thank you. That really did clarify it.
Wonderful. All right. Any other thoughts? Any other comments? Douglas, go ahead.
I think it's tame your mind what it is through God, because we have the mind that God gave us, and you want to reach enlightenment. okay, at a higher level. It's through the mind that physical is good, but the mind from God is the most powerful thing we have, and we should learn how to use it correctly, and that will help us to attain the enlightenment that we look for.
Wonderful. Thank you, Douglas. Next up is Jyoti.
Yeah, in this particular verse, there's a talk about sacrifice. So the purpose of the sacrifice is to arrive at the status of complete knowledge, then to gain release from material miseries, and ultimately to engage in loving transcendental service in the Supreme Lord. So if one attains a knowledge without spirituality, then he's on a wrong platform, because then that is not something that is going to give you long-lasting happiness. But if you are sacrificing with the knowledge of spirituality, then you self-actualize, you self-inquiry, you do the self-inquiry, and then you reach a higher place in life, higher order thinking. That's my take on this one.
Wonderful. Another way of talking about this is the issue of center and periphery that we talked about in Tao Te Ching. What this is saying is that focus on your center. Don't focus, the knowledge of the center is the most valuable, most important thing. Focus on that. All right. Let's go ahead and read number 34. Let's start with Ambika this time, followed by Brian. Ambika.
Obtain that knowledge by prostrating at the feet of those who are in possession of it, the seers of essential principles, by inquiring and by service. They will initiate thee in that knowledge.
Thank you. Brian?
Those illuminated souls who have realized the truth will instruct you in the knowledge of the Brahman. If you prostrate yourself before them, question them and serve them as a disciple.
Thank you. I'm going to read this translation. Learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him with reverence and render service unto him. Such an enlightened saint can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. Yogeshwar, what does this verse say?
There's some noise around here, so maybe if
That's
you could
all
take
right.
me later.
Okay,
Yeah?
sure. Whenever you're ready, let me know. Just go ahead and type exclamation mark. Thank you. Next, so I'm going to read the commentary here. From this is the website is called holybhagwadgita.org. And so the commentary. On hearing that the sacrifice should be performed in knowledge, the natural question that follows is, how can we obtain spiritual knowledge? Sri Krishna gives the answer in this verse. He says, approach a spiritual master, inquire from him submissively, and render service to him. The absolute truth cannot be understood merely by our own contemplation. The intellect of the soul is clouded by ignorance from endless lifetimes, covered with nescience. The intellect cannot overcome its ignorance simply by its own effort. One needs to receive knowledge from a God-realized saint who knows the absolute truth. The Vedic scriptures advise us repeatedly on the importance of the guru in the spiritual path. Serve the Guru with pure mind, giving up doubts. He will then bring you great happiness by bestowing knowledge of scriptures and discrimination. Jagadguru Shankaracharya stated, until you surrender to your Guru, you cannot liberate from the material energy. One of the most magnanimous graces of God is when he brings the soul in contact with a true Guru. But the process of transfer of spiritual knowledge from the teacher to the student is very difficult from the material knowledge. Secular education does not require deep respect for the teacher. Transmission of knowledge can be purchased simply by paying teachers' fees. However, spiritual edification is not imparted to the student by mechanical teaching process, nor is it purchased for a price. It is revealed in the heart of the disciple by Guru's grace. When the disciple develops humility and the Guru is pleased with the service attitude of the disciple. That is why Prahlad Maharaj says, until we bathe ourselves in the dust of the lotus feet of a saint, we can never have experience of transcendental platform. Hence, in this verse, Sri Krishna mentions the need for approaching a guru with reverence, inquiring about the truth from him with humility, and pleasing him by rendering service. Yogeshwar.
So in this verse, Krishna is saying that we should do three things, and then the Guru will do one thing unto us. And in so many commentaries I've read that it should be done in the order that they are said. So it is first, you should bow down, like pay reverence to the Guru, yeah? And then you ask. You don't first ask. So you should first say namaskar or bow down to the Guru, go to the Guru's feet, and then you ask. So that is a sign of, in Hindi they call it Sharanagati. Yeah.
Yep.
So it is a sign of that I've come to you. So hold my hand and take me through the planes that I have not discovered, through the areas of the world that I have not known. And this may feel really like that you're giving out your logic. You're not now going to use your mind, but it's not like that. It is like, you know, right now we use a GPS system in our cars, or before we used to use a map. So it's just like that. If the GPS system tells you that you should go left, you should go left, because you don't know where. When you don't know the place you are going, you just know the name of the place, but you don't know the road that you have to take. So you just have to follow the GPS as it says. If it says left, you go left. If it says right, you go right. So that is how it is here. So when you're bowing down to the Guru, it is, you are actually creating a place that I am now at your feet. So now impart onto me the knowledge that you have, and take me through the planes that I've not gone through. First bow down, and then you ask. So after you have asked, the Guru may give you an answer logically, or one that fits your mind. Because if the Guru doesn't give you an answer that fits to your mind, you won't accept it. That is one thing. But, you know, Brahma or Atman, those concepts are not things that should fit in your mind. So there is going to be a gap between you asking the question and the Guru imparting the real knowledge onto you. So that gap should be filled by seva. Seva is, in Indian philosophy, has a great impact on your own self, because just bowing down to the Guru doesn't show that you are totally going to do what the Guru says. But seva Seva is something whereby the guru tells you something and you are going to do it, whatever he says. Yeah. And seva is not like the main concept that is really taken right now. Like you are only doing seva for the guru. Like you're just going around him. You're doing physical tasks that he's saying. Not that, but seva is actually whereby whereby you are going to do whatever the guru says, even in the spiritual world. That is the seva that you're doing to the guru. If he tells you that you're supposed to contemplate on Atma, then you're going to do it. Yeah. If he tells you that you're not yet ready to contemplate on Atma and you should be doing some physical things as well, because if you're not doing physical things when you're not ready, that will make you do bad physical things. You'll do bad karma. Basically, you'll do pap. So instead of that, do this right physical karma that is according to nature, according to the laws of nature, according to God. They will take you ahead in your spiritual path. So it is doing as the Guru says for you, and so many things that the Guru says are specified for you. So there's like there are so many ways the Guru can impart knowledge on you, because everybody is different from each other. One person is different from the other, so they have to take them through their own paths. And then they're saying that that Guru gives you the Gnan, but which Guru? So Gnaninas Tattvadarshina. Which Guru will give you the knowledge, the enlightenment? One who has reached there, one who can see the Tattva, one who is already Sthit Pragya. He only can give you that knowledge.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Yogeshwar. I wanted to talk about an example that I heard in one of the commentaries. So the student goes to the guru and says, teach me. And he has a lot of ideas. He says, you know what, it should be like this, it should be like that. The guru has a very interesting response. He says, he hands him a pot of water and say, fill it with water. And it fills up. And he says, oh no, fill some more, fill some more. She says, I can't fill anymore in it. It's already full. So it's like this. It's the same thing with you. You know, there isn't any place to fill. So there is, I think that humility. So first is the character of the guru. Okay, what the knowledge we're talking about here is the knowledge of the Atma, the knowledge of the core of your being. So only somebody who has that can teach that. So that's the first thing. And that is the rarest thing, to find a person who has that. Then if you do find such a person, you need to have the humility. And this is true for any learning. Humility is crucial for any learning, and more so here than anything else. And the concept of service, so being ready to take the action that is needed, is a crucial part, that you have to not only have, in the Bible, we're talking about that thing, when Aquinas was describing what the people of Samaria did, he said, they heard the words, they had faith, they walked to find Jesus. So you have to take the action, and they asked Jesus to stay with them. Okay, so it's the same kind of an idea. You need to have that kind of an approach to a guru. All right, I'm now going to open it up for any thoughts any comments you may have. Go ahead and type an exclamation mark or raise your hand in Zoom if you would like to comment on just this verse 34. Louis, go ahead.
Thank you. My question has to do with discerning true gurus from people who are said to be gurus, but are actually manipulative, or they teach things that are not true, or they end up being damaging to your person. So I would like advice on discerning gurus. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm going to take all the questions, all the comments, and then I will open it up for people who want to answer those questions. Douglas, what's your question or comment on number 34? Douglas, you need to unmute.
Yeah. Okay. It stops once in a while. Gotta give me a second. Okay. Yeah. Ramdas, Baba Ramdas had some gurus, and I don't want to find it, what you think about it. And he gave them LSD, but he used to take one, but the guru took all 6 of them. Okay, and was able to be okay and everything, like nothing happened to him. So I wanted to know, in your opinion, what that's all about.
Thank you. Next up is Jason. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, I see this one. I think translates guru, but I think the text use the word the Jnana. Is that the same as guru? That's my question. And the second question is, does in Indian tradition or any text talk about how to become a guru? Is that a born with as a guru, or is always divine, or a regular people can become a guru? That's my question. Guru, or in these words, Jnana or something. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you. Great question, Jason. Yogeshwar, would you like to answer any of the questions? Jason's question or Louis's question?
Who can become a guru? So basically it is, and how to become a guru. Basically here they've given the criteria. You must know the tattva. You should be able to see the tattva, not just from reading scriptures or just from what you've learned from the world, but you should be able to experience it. Like if you say Tao in Tao Te Ching, so you should be able to experience the Tao, not just read the scripture. So that is the criteria for being a guru. And another thing is, experiencing it is one thing, yes. It is really hard to get one who has experienced. And it is even harder to get one who has experienced and is willing to impart that knowledge on you. That is even harder to get. So the criteria is basically one who has gotten to that stage and is willing to impart that knowledge on you, like he has imparted it on himself, because he only will know the planes that are unwalked by the world.
Yogeshwar, can you look at the word that is used for guru in Sanskrit? Can you name the word and then talk about its meaning?
In the verse itself?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Basically here, the main word is Gnaninas Tattva Darshina. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So guru basically is gu and ru. So it's two syllables here. And in Sanskrit, you take a letter by the syllable. So gu, ru. So one who guru is a person, yeah, is a person who cuts out the darkness within you. So that is gu and ru. And that means that he must be devoid of darkness. He must be light. Yeah. So the Gnaninas Tattva Darshina, the Tattva Darshina part, brings up the word guru,
Mhm.
basically. So a person who has seen the Tattva has light within him. Not physical light that we talk about, like light from the sun or the bird, but light of knowledge, basically.
Wonderful. Beautifully
So,
put. Thank you. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
no, it was that's done.
Thank you. Thank you, Yogeshwar. All right. Now, Brian, if you could go ahead and read number 35.
Okay, number 35. When you have reached enlightenment, ignorance will delude you no longer. In the light of that knowledge, you will see the entire creation within your own Atman and in me.
Wonderful. I really like this translation. Next up is Ambika. Ambika, if you could read.
Having that knowledge, thou shalt not return into delusion at all, O Pandava. By that thou shalt see all existences without exception in the self, then in me.
Wonderful. I'm going to read this one. Following this path and having achieved enlightenment from a guru, O Arjun, you will no longer fall into delusion. In the light of that knowledge, you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme and are within me. Okay. Yogeshwar, could you talk a little bit about what this means?
Yeah. The knowledge after which you get it, you never get deluded. So basically, the knowledge that we have right now, we should do this or we should not do this. That is just earthly knowledge, let's say. It's just knowledge basically to our level, to the mind level, or knowledge that helps us get along with the world. So the right and wrong that is in the world is basically about that. But the knowledge they're talking about here is once you get to that level of sthit pragya, you never actually get any confusion whether what I should be doing. You never get to the confusion of what is right and wrong. You just know it because you have reached a level of the sthit pragya. And then he's saying that after reaching that level, what will you experience? What you'll experience is the whole creation in you, and then the whole creation within me as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Folks, I'm going to read the commentary now, and then I invite you to talk about what you got from the verse 35. Just as darkness can never engulf the sun, similarly, illusion can never again overcome the soul who has once attained enlightenment. Those who have realized God always remain in God consciousness. Under the illusion of Maya, we see the world as separate from God and establish friendship or enmity with other human beings, depending upon whether they satisfy or harm our interest. Divine knowledge that comes from enlightenment changes our perspective and the vision of the world. Enlightened saints see the world as the energy of God and utilize whatever comes their way in the service of God. They also see all human beings as part of God and harbor a divine attitude towards everyone. Thus, Hanuman says, I see forms of Lord Ram and Mother Sita in everyone. And so I fold my hands and offer my respects to all. Right? If anybody would like to talk about what they understand from this, if anybody has would like to raise any questions on number 35, please go ahead and type exclamation mark or raise your hand in Zoom. Douglas, what do you think of number 35?
I think it is the knowledge that one receives, from the work that they do to get to the place of getting enlightenment. I've been struggling with enlightenment for many, many years, meditation and everything else. I have, type of thing. And I don't think I'm there yet. Okay, I tell you that. Okay. But the thing is, from what he's saying and everything, we have to improve the mind. There's different yogas too,
Thank you.
Hindu yoga. Okay.
Thank you, Douglas. Next up is going to be Tejal, followed by Ambika and Brian. Tejal, go ahead.
So what I understood from this verse 35 is that the person who is enlightened will no longer dwell into the world of mithya, which is basically illusion, and which considers the question such as what is right and what is wrong, what is an ethical path here. So this person, this ordinary person, will try to find out the meaning throughout entire his life. But the person who is enlightened one will no longer have such questions because he is already enlightened one. He will sense the divine consciousness, and he will not remain into such worldly or materialistic questions because he has that system, and he is the only person who is balanced, which is Sthita Pragya. That's what I understood.
Wonderful. Beautifully put. Thank you. Thank you, Tejal. Next up is Ambika, Brian, and Madhav. Ambika.
What I understand from this shloka is that the knowledge that we gain of every single life form within which we see the effulgence of that self eventually takes us to that supreme divinity. And when we see that interconnection, that is part of the enlightenment and the knowledge of no separation of that supreme soul. And that itself is very grounding in that sthit prajna.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next up is Brian, followed by Madhav. Brian.
Okay. Yeah, I just had a question here. I mean, it's, it sounds like, you start out and he goes to a spiritual master and, he asks for help in reaching enlightenment. And now he's describing, what the enlightened soul is like. But I have a question. I mean, the path in between must be long and difficult, and a lot of things have to happen. Maybe, I mean, the master tells you that, but is there anybody that can give any kind of help about the process?
That is rest of the Gita.
Oh, okay.
we will get to rest of the Gita. What this is showing is that this is showing the value of pursuing this path. So it is giving you an overview. First is saying that you need a teacher. A teacher will help you a great deal. And why would he help? And what kind of teacher that you need? The second, now in this one, what he's saying is, this is really about this, I keep thinking about this in terms of center and periphery. What he's saying is that if you can stand at the center, then you don't get distracted by things that are happening in periphery, and you see what is happening in periphery as an expression of what is happening in the center. And unique thing about the Indian view is Tattvamasi, so that the core of you and God is the same. And there is this core within each and every one of us. So if you recognize the center, if you can be at the center, then you are at the center of God, you're at the center of other people. So you can see everything else as manifestations. So that's what this verse is doing, as best as I can tell. Next up is going to be Madhav and Addy.
Quick comment here. I'm reminded of an analogy. The analogy is you're walking down the street and you see something slithering. Your first thought is it is a snake. Then upon closer inspection, you realize it's actually a rope. It's not a snake. But then after that, no matter how many times you look at it, you always know it's a rope because you're free from that quote unquote Maya. And in that similar way, the guru now knows what is the truth and what is false.
Wonderfully put. Thank you. Thank you, Madhav. Next up is Addy. Addy, what do you think about this verse?
I'm just thinking about like, how does the person know that he or she is enlightened? At what point would that person know that that person has been enlightened? And I have another questions about being a deity. I thought that in Hinduism, a person becomes a deity only until that person reaches nirvana. So I just like don't know when you say this, a person becomes a god in him or her, the person is a god, but at what point would that person become a god? I'm thinking that, yeah.
Thank you, Addy. We'll take all the questions at the end. So anybody who wants can answer the questions. So we'll keep track of all the questions and you can come to any of these questions. Next up is going to be Jyoti, followed by Bharadwaj.
I just have a comment to make here. Gita, to understand Gita, you have to have a belief in Gita, because sometimes it's very complicated and it's a very long process. Like Penny was asking, you have to put aside your personal belief system and you have to trust in what is written in Gita. That is the only way you will understand Gita. That's what I have to say. And this is from my personal experience. I never believed in Gita. And when I started to go to the guru, I had something to say about the guru. And but slowly started to sink, because my experiences also became such that I needed some kind of a background to understand, to cope with my experiences. Then came the Gita. So I think you have to really trust what Gita is saying to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Bharadwaj, and then I'm going to invite Doug to talk about what he got from verse 35. Bharadwaj.
Shrikant, I think it was in one of your commentary readings where there was some discussion about consciousness and the enlightening knowledge that we kind of see referenced throughout some of the previous verses. Is this enlightening knowledge consciousness? That's my first question. And then the second line, I'd just like to quickly read it here. In the light of that knowledge, you will see the entire creation within your own Atman and in me. This reminds me of something that I've come across. I believe it might have been Douglas Harding, I could be wrong there, and relating to having no head, where he described it as you are space for the world, kind of implying that the consciousness is the space where the world is. Are these kind of talking about the same thing? I'm just trying to relate it in terms of what I have come across. I know it's a little bit outside, but those are two things that come to my mind as I read this verse.
Sure. I think the second one is very different, but we'll come to that. I'm going to have Doug talk about what he got, and then I'm going to invite anybody who wants to answer any of the questions. So feel free to, folks, feel free to put questions on the table, but we're going to go between comments on the verse itself, and then, and then questions. Doug, what do you get from number 35?
Well, let me read it in this one
Please.
translation because it sort of puts it together a little differently than the others. This is the Christopher Isherwood Swami Prabhavananda. Not sure I'm pronouncing it right, but when you have reached enlightenment, ignorance will delude you no longer. In the light of that knowledge, you will see the entire creation within your own Atman and in me. So it sort of does something different at the tail end of that line. But this last few weeks, the last month actually has been a month of a lot of distractions to knock me off center. And I think if anything has kept me going, it's trying to return to that sort of empty space where you can get in touch with sort of the primal energy that may heal us. I mean, not that I have a tap that I can turn it on and off, but it is sort of approachable at times. And so that having a hard time right now. I just came out of a board meeting.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Yogesh,
but this relates to this thing that may be one of the most important board meetings of the year. So I'm a little rattled. So I'm trying to touch base with the still space right now.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So, sorry to spring on you.
No, that's fine.
Go ahead and type an exclamation mark whenever you're ready.
I expected you to.
Okay. So Yogeshwar, would you like to answer any of the questions? Folks, it's more important to ask questions than to answer them. So feel free to ask whatever questions you have. And then I'm going to leave it to anybody who wants to answer the questions. And we want to keep the discussion in the general area of the verses itself. So Yogeshwar, if you would like to address anything, you're welcome to do that.
How do you know you've reached enlightenment? So one thing is, enlightenment is such a great experience, you cannot miss it. That's one thing. If you reach enlightenment, you will know that I've reached. But there are small steps whereby, there may be some times whereby you feel you have reached, but you have not. That is why the scriptures are there. Like here, they've said that when you reach enlightenment, you will see the whole creation in you and in me as well. So those are some steps whereby you can know, yeah, I am experiencing something like this. So the scriptures will be telling you what you experience when you reach there. And what we think about right now, like realizing the whole creation in me, it may seem a bit vague, like how can the whole creation be within me? But when you experience it, it is so real that you can't say it's wrong. Like when you're trying to explain the concept of love to someone who is like 10 years old, yeah, he will understand love because he loves the mother, but he won't understand love like loving the opposite sex, like it, yeah. So he will understand part of it, but when he sees somebody in love and then they are running away with them, or they're just he will think that those are stupid things that they are doing in love. But it's just that he doesn't understand the feeling you get when you are in love. Yeah. So just relating to a concept we know, which is love, but not really like that, but just to wrap our minds around that there are concepts in the world whereby you can't explain them, you have to experience them. That's when you know it.
Wonderful. Folks, Douglas, the way we run this is that we're trying to cover Gita, and I'm taking questions I'm letting people ask questions. Everybody is welcome to ask whatever questions, but we're not trying to, we will answer whatever questions we can answer. This is a big quest. This is essentially a personal quest for everybody, and everybody should be asking questions and answering questions as best as they can. And we are doing this in the context of Gita. So we are going to go through the entire presentation. Many of the answers are going to come from Gita itself, but it may be, several meetups from now. And I invite everybody to read Gita, listen to Gita on their own, and study it on their own in order to answer, kind of ask and answer your own questions. And what we are doing here is that we're trying to give high-level views on what we understand by the text itself. So that's why we are staying close to the text, because the magic is produced when multiple people with multiple perspectives are focused on the same thing. So that's the principle that I use in order to shape the entire gestalt of these meetups. Next up is Brian, followed by Evanik. Brian.
So I would say I'm constantly deluded by ignorance. So I'll put that out there. But when I try to overcome it, there's two different mind games I play. And I just wanted to share that because they resonate with some of the things other people have said. The Atman in me, or the creation within me, and in Krishna. Sometimes I imagine, well, what if in a certain way, everything, in our day-to-day life, we look at things, we think, oh, this is dead, this sofa is dead, or this chair is dead, or whatever. And then I think, okay, well, what if I'm dead? There's something, what if I share that quality with this chair? And I don't like that feeling. So then I think, what if the chair is alive?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm alive?
Mm-hmm.
And I share that quality with the chair. I like that feeling.
Thank you.
And then the other one, I have another mind game.
No, let's not go too far, Brian. Let's quickly go ahead.
The other one is that because it goes to the place and the center that people are talking about. Yeah, I think there is a place. I think it's in the center. And then I think there's absolutely nothing there. It's just the place around which things spin.
Got it. Next up is going to be Evanik.
I just have a follow-up question to what your guest was saying. When he was talking about enlightenment and the example of the 10-year-old boy, is it another way of saying it is that enlightenment is experiential? So what I mean by that is he was saying the boy knows love because he loves his mother, but there's different kinds of love that he has yet to experience. So I'm just wondering if it's just that it's experiential and it comes through time.
Sure. If Yogeshwar wants to answer it, you're welcome to do that. Go ahead.
Yes. The question she asked whether it's experiential, it is experiential, and whether it comes through time. On 38, they are saying it comes through time. Kalena Atmani Vindati. So we shall get there.
Wonderful. All right, let's go to number 36. Let's have Brian. I think Brian is reading from the same one that Doug is reading. So Doug, if you could pick some other translation. So let's start with Brian, then Ambika, and then Doug. Brian, go ahead.
36. And though you were the foulest of sinners, this knowledge alone would carry you like a raft over all your sins.
Ambika? Ambika, please go ahead and unmute.
Okay. Even if thou art the greatest doer of sin beyond all sinners, thou shalt cross over all the crookedness of evil in the ship of knowledge.
Doug?
Even if thou wert the most evil of all evildoers, thou wouldst cross over all wickedness by the boat of knowledge.
Thank you. Yogeshwar, what does this verse mean?
Even though you are a person who has done more bad activities in this world, more than even any other person you can think of, yeah? Even though you are that person, still the boat of knowledge, the boat of enlightenment will take you over all that karma we talk about. So basically the analogy of the boat, yeah, or the ship, as Ambika read in the translation. When we want to get through like a seasonal lake, you know, seasonal lakes in India, they are very small. So you can even swim from one side to the other. So you can't swim through some lakes, but what they're talking about is karma, great karma that you have, that has been put through all this time. So one way to get through it is by swimming, but swimming through an ocean, it is not practical at all. So you must use a ship. So what the ship is here is the enlightenment, the Jnana that you're going to get. And that is going to get you through all that karma. Whether it is good, whether it's bad, it's just going to get you through karma and take you to the other place. And this, I would like to, the first meetup I came here when we were discussing Sthit Pragya, there was an analogy that was used. There's this side, and then there's a lake, and then there's the other side. Yeah. So basically, that's what Krishna is trying to say here. There's this worldly side here that we know, and then we have to cross over to the other side, which is totally different.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Doug, would you like to comment on this verse?
Yeah, I think the first time I read this was a big relief to me, in the sense of whatever terrible things I think I've done or imagined I've done, there is some release or some openness. And I do think knowledge is not what we in the West think of as rational Western logic. I think it's a different kind of deeper knowing, which is hard to explain, but as somebody else pointed out, when you know it or experience it, whether it's love or knowledge, it's like, oh, or even extreme pain. It's like, I didn't know this existed. And you suddenly know what extreme pain is, or it may or may not disappoint. It may or may not fulfill all your expectations, but you kind of know something that you often spend years trying to figure out what that was.
Yeah, that's a great observation. The concept of knowledge here is different. So earlier when we're talking about this, is it's the knowledge of your core. It's the knowledge of the center. It's the knowledge of the universe is what we're talking about. Secondly, we are also talking about not just knowing it intellectually. So in the description of the guru, it's made very clear that it's not somebody who can say things, but somebody who is that. Do you actually stand at the center? And can you act from the center? That's what this kind of knowledge is, where it is fully experienced and fully expressed. Okay. Anybody wants to comment, go ahead and type an exclamation mark. What do you get from this verse? Next up is going to be Margarita, followed by David. Margarita.
Yes, thank you. I'm still learning, but reading this and also listening to you, I remember the story of Paul, or previously called Saul. Saul previously killed Christians, but on the way he got this revelation, and he knew who he was and what was his purpose. And then he transformed his life into the one who almost made the gospel, other than the four disciples. So, and I agree with Douglas. Reading this also is a relief for me personally, because I realize what is sin, what is a mistake. If that you can use as a way to transform yourself, but that can only be done by the pure knowledge. So you come within yourself and get a good guidance, through guidance from a good teacher. And then probably we can transform our life to attain what the goal of our life. Thank you.
That was a beautiful analogy between what this verse is saying and the story of Paul. And there are many such stories in the New Testament, because it's this, I think it's the same point. The point is that when you accept the right way, when you understand the right way, when you start following the right way, it's almost like you're born again. You are, everything that weighed you down, you are able to go past it in this ship of knowledge. It's very much analogous to the New Testament concept that you overcome your sins by following the right path. Thank you. Next up is David, followed by Jyoti. David.
Yes, I was very curious in this verse about the passive versus the active. The first part talking about person being the most sinful, it seems that the person is actively committing these sins. If you are this, whereas the second part of the verse, I mean, again, I don't know the Sanskrit, the verb, but seems passive in the way that Yogeshwar was describing it, that you will cross over through this boat of knowledge, in my translation, transcendental knowledge. So it's a question, is the person actively making the effort to gain this knowledge, or is this that they've actively done these sins and with or without action on their part, they will be transported by this knowledge? In other words, they could actively or require active, with the help of Sadhguru or someone else, guidance to gain this knowledge. But if they inherently have this knowledge or somehow other gain this knowledge, that they will be transported by this boat. In other words, it's sort of like delegating this role to this boat to something else. Again, based on Yogeshwar's description, I'm not swimming across it actively. I'm putting myself in this boat, or I've somehow attained this boat. Somehow, again, it could be actively, but it sounds like it also is sort of that I may have actively committed these karmic injuries, these karmic sins, but yet I can be saved through this external control, external locus of control. So I'm just curious if that's
wonderful question. Wonderful question. The question is this active or passive? What is it? And what's, so we will deal with this. So anybody who wants can answer this question at whatever point. Next up is going to be Jyoti, Adi, and Evanik. Jyoti.
My question is it important to like the guru who's imparting the knowledge and trying to enlighten you?
Okay, thank you. Next up is Adi, followed by Evanik. Adi.
Thank you. I'm still trying to understand this, and I agree with you. There are some similarities between this passage and the New Testament, but I can also see some differences too. And the differences is repentance in the Christian's belief. A person, in order to have to be born again, that person must repent, and then they can be reborn. But
Wonderful.
what I'm
Excellent
not
question.
understanding about this, this passage is that, for example, a bad person and a good person can be on this side before they cross the boat. The boat is the enlightenment to the other side. But I don't understand, like, for being on this boat, but what must that person, would there be something to happen in order for, what is happening on the other side, So
Very
there's
good.
something still missing in my mind. I just don't know how to put it into words.
Thank you. Next up is going to, and anybody who wants can address any of these questions. Next up is going to be Evanik, Douglas, and Doug. Evanik.
Yeah, I think I just love the theme, like when hearing people talk about, you don't have to be perfect. You can do things, you could have done things in your past that wasn't great. But if you're pursuing the path of, like, just as long as you're pursuing the path of righteousness or pursuing the right path, I think you're still moving forward. And I just like the simple fact that you don't have to get it right and it doesn't have to be perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next up is going to be Douglas. Douglas, what's your question or comment about verse 36?
Well, it's
I
really,
think
it's
um,
really,
me, Douglas, or which Douglas?
Douglas Pilzer, please.
oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, not been having a problem of talking to you. Something happened to my computer. Okay, it's going crazy. Okay. The whole thing is what I got out of that came out is unconditional love. Okay, and devotion, and doing things, to improve our mind. And the question I'm trying to ask is a hard question, and that is, how do you reach enlightenment? And I guess it's the whole thing you've been talking about. What I mean is,
that's what we are going to be going through over the next probably a year or so.
Okay, because that's a big question for a lot of people.
Thank you.
Everybody wants to become enlightened, okay? And very few make it. All right, thank you.
Okay, Doug.
I really have a question about the word that is translated sometimes as wickedness, and then in one translation, this newer translation is transgressions. And so for me, is it a question of an evil state that becomes irrelevant, or is it like in the end of chapter 2, where when you enter a certain state, the impulse to sin, to transgress, disappears? So I'm curious about the word in this verse, which is VRJINAM, what that actually means, because it's translated a little differently.
Sure.
Like, does it take you beyond what your transgressions, or ignore that you're a transgressor? So in a way, it's the action of it I'm curious about.
Wonderful. So thank you, Doug. So Yogeshwar, if you'd like to comment on this, there are three things that were very interesting and very closely connected to this verse that were brought up. And you're welcome to comment on anything else as well. The 3 points is, first, what does Regina mean? Second one is that, is this an active process or a passive process? Is the ship a passive tool or is it active? And the next question was about the concept of repentance. What is the role of repentance, if any, in this thought? If you'd like to answer any of them.
Active or passive, basically, knowledge is basically, it is life. It is the life force, basically. So there's nothing passive about it. It is just always there. Yeah. And the concept in Indian philosophy basically is you are already Atman, you just don't know. So it is there, but we have been deluded, yeah, that we don't know it. Now, it is an active process, totally active, and we are going to talk more about it in the next verse. It actually gives another analogy of fire. So if I could answer that question better after the next verse. Virginum basically means, it basically means the deeds that do not lead, yeah, to enlightenment directly. So that's virginum. So you may have done deeds that don't lead to enlightenment directly, but you are just working it out. You know, when you're actually trying some things out, you're trying devotion out, you're going to now take some beads, you're going to do some rounds of the beads, and you're going to chant some mantras. So you're going to do all those things, yeah? And even while you're doing that, you're being deluded by the world, by other things like, you know, eating and drinking and all those things. So you're actually living a life right now. So all that, yeah, it is basically, if you take the literal understanding of virginum, like direct translation, it will mean sin, direct translation. But virginum here means any good or bad according to the world. So anything that doesn't lead to enlightenment on the path of enlightenment is a bad deed in a way. That's how I'll put it.
Thank you.
And in the part of repentance, there, you know, in this, when you actually are in this state, when you are at the center, you realize that thoughts are being done by your mind and actions are being done by your body. So you actually have not done anything bad. So repentance is actually a good tool until you have reached this state. And it helps a lot, practically as well. Yeah. And it is not something that you should leave before you get to this state.
Wonderful. Thank you.
It helps a lot practically.
Thanks, Yogeshwar. Really appreciate. Next up is Evanik.
Yeah, I have another question. When Yogeshwar was talking, he was talking about when we are deluded. Is it that we're deluded because we don't want to do what is necessary to find enlightenment?
Okay. Why are we deluded? Wonderful. Let's have everybody talk and then we'll go back. Brian, followed by Jason. Brian.
I had a quick question. I know at the kind of the beginning you presented Sthita Prajna, like standing at the core and looking. Is that enlightenment or is that something else?
Okay, I love that. I'm going to see if both Doug and Yogeshwar can talk about Sthita Prajna, because I think that's really the crucial concept here. I mean, this entire concept is very difficult for the Western mind to grasp. So I think this is, it's great. So a great question. Next up is Jason. Jason, if you could unmute. Oh, there is some problem with your, can you, there is some problem with your audio. Let's see if you can fix it. Otherwise, you can just leave and come back. I think that should fix it. Zoom is pretty good at fixing it that way. Very good. Okay. So whenever you're back, you can go ahead and chime in. So Yogeshwar, would you like to talk, or let's start with Doug first, and then Doug, would you like to talk about the concept of Sthita Prajna?
Yeah, I'd also like to learn to pronounce it, but I think I'm close, but I won't try right now. I think it's that sort of standing firm at a sort of center point that doesn't wobble. And it's a lot, that whole section at the end of chapter 2, which is how does an enlightened soul stand, sit, walk, talk? What do they do? And I think it's that idea that when you hit that stand and deliver state, then a lot of things fall away. And I don't know, that's sort of
wonderful.
Thank
you. Thank you. Let me just check if Jason has regained his voice. Jason. Nope, doesn't look like yet. Jason, can you say something? Nope. Okay. All right. Yogeshwar, go ahead, please.
Why we are deluded? So we are deluded because we are wanting other things. For example, let's say we have gone to study to the school and the teacher gives us assignments. We know we have to do the assignment, but we still don't do it. There's something that we are attracted to more than studying still, yeah? So we are deluded by our own passion. Like we have a passion to do something else. We still want something else apart from standing at the core of our own being and knowing our own self. We still want to know what others are thinking about us or everything about the world. So we still want to go outside rather than inside. And even though we want to go inside, you see, a person who goes to school may want to study a bit, but still he's being deluded by other things like movies or watching cricket or other things. And then sthit prajna, let's say, that concept is sitting at the core of your own self. It is like, basically, if you could say, consciousness, mindfulness, yeah? What the part whereby in the Western, they say consciousness and mindfulness, they show how to get to sthit prajna. That is the concept of consciousness. They're like, which is really known to us right now. So sthit prajna is after you've practiced consciousness, after you've gone through all that, now you are there where you have to reach. What you have been wanting to acquire all this time, you are there and you're at the core. The world doesn't delude you. You can understand the world as it is.
Wonderful. Thank you, Yogeshwar. Jason, have you regained your voice?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, I'm in a hotel room, so it's different. So, yeah, my question is about since we talk about the virginam, which means act of sin. So I would like to know, if possible, about the concept of sin in Hindus. Is that just the weird thing, or they have the meaning of a religious meaning? Yeah, thank you.
Yogeshwar, would you like to address that? The concept of sin?
Yeah, the concept of sin, basically how we take it right now is, how we understand it right now. Virginam is act of sin. So we see good and bad. So the good acts that we are doing towards the world or towards ourselves are not virginam according to our understanding right now. And the bad acts like beating up somebody or stealing something, those are the bad acts like the virginam, yes? But there is also another level of looking at virginam. There's this level whereby something that doesn't take you, even though it is a good act according to the world, but if it is not taking you towards the core of yourself, if it is not taking you towards the Atman, towards Brahma, then also that is regionam. Like there is a quote in the Puranas, even the Puranas talk about it, whereby Swarglok, which is like where the angels stay, according to Indian philosophy. So even Swarglok, Devlok, that is Narak, which means hell, to a person who wants moksha. So if we take that analogy, though, even because good deeds in Indian philosophy takes you to Swarg, to Devlok. So even that is Narak for a person who wants to attain moksha. So using that, anything that deludes you out of moksha, out of being at your core, attaining Brahma, that would be taken as Vrijana.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Yogeshwar. Next up is going to be Madhav, followed by Kavita. Madhav.
Yeah, I would just like to add that in Christianity or Abrahamic religions, you have the concept of good and evil, but it doesn't translate to Hinduism. It's more like ignorance and knowledge, just that small little bit of thing.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Madhav. Next up is Kavita.
Hi. My question is there a hierarchy for the knowledge imparted to the disciple compared to the guru? And if so, what is the epitome of acquiring this knowledge or this enlightenment? And my third question is there any way that a person would fall out of the enlightenment in any part? Because he said that it's over the time it's being acquired, right? So is there any way that we fall out of it during the path of, that's my question. Thank you.
Okay, that's a lot of questions. Let's do one thing. Let's continue with our reading, because I want to finish up to 42 today. And we will take all these questions, anything, you'll keep track of all the questions. And more towards the end, we will try to bring all of these questions back. And if we don't, you're welcome to restate your questions. All right. So let's go with Brian. If you could read number 37.
Number 37. The blazing fire turns wood to ashes. The fire of knowledge turns all karmas to ashes.
Thank you. Next up is going to be Ambika, followed by Doug. Ambika.
As a fire kindled turns to ashes its fuel, so too, O Arjuna, the fire of knowledge turns all works to ashes.
Thank you. Doug?
As the kindled fire reduces firewood to ashes, Arjuna, so the fire of knowledge reduces all actions to ashes.
Okay, Yogeshwar will be back in a couple of minutes. Doug, what do you think this is saying? Let me do one thing. Let me read out a commentary and then I'll hand it over to you.
Sure.
It says, we have a heap of karmas attached to each of us, consisting of the reactions of the sinful and righteous deeds performed by us over infinite lifetimes. If we endeavor to exhaust these karmas by reaping their results, it will take many more lifetimes. And in the meantime, further karmas will accumulate in an endless process. But Sri Krishna assures Arjuna that knowledge has the power to burn our heap of karmas in this lifetime itself. That is because knowledge of the soul and its relationship with God leads us to surrender to him. When we surrender to God, he burns our stockpile of endless lifetime of karmas and releases us from material bondage. Doug.
Well, I think it suggests a kind of melting away of firewood to ashes, and our actions and the way we're wrapped up into them, into ashes. It sort of dissipates them. And so I think it's an interesting section. And I think this harks back to that chapter 2 again. When you get to something larger like the ocean, then a lot of the things that have bothered you don't bother you. I mean, you enter this bigger reality, and it just, whether it burns them away or just makes them invisible, like I think that's sort of what the heart of it is. But it keeps approaching it through different metaphors.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Yogeshwar, whenever you're back, you can go ahead and type exclamation mark.
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Basically, here they're giving another analogy. First, they talked about the ship. Now they're talking about fire. So in some commentaries, I've read that. So if you get over all the karma that you've done using a ship, so will the karma still stay with you? So with this other analogy of fire, Krishna is saying, no, all the karma will be burnt. Yeah. And how will it be burnt? Yeah. You see, to keep a fire alive, you put in wood. So to reach enlightenment, you will use good deeds. You will do some action. You will do something to reach enlightenment. But what enlightenment does is it also takes away even the good deeds that you've done. The fire also consumes the wood as well. So in that way, after enlightenment has been reached, even the good deeds, even the bad deeds that have been done, everything will actually not be there for you. They will just be consumed by the fire. That's how I understand it. And then you see how they're saying that Jnanagni sarva karmani bhasmasat kurute. So sarva karmani, that means all karma. In Indian philosophy, it is even what we read about in the gospel, like last week, not this week, but last week, whereby Jesus told them that because they were thinking that they are observing the Sabbath, that was a religious thing, that was a good thing to do. But like that, there are good and bad things even in the scriptures, but we don't understand them how they are supposed to be understood. So in Indian philosophy, the good and the bad are put in, like, they are different. Yes, they are different. But after you've reached Sthit Pragyan, they all go away. They all put to one side. So if Jesus is talking about the concept of the Holy Spirit, of love, loving your neighbor, so all that is put aside. Even the good, even the bad, according to how we understand it, it is put aside. It is not with us right now. So sarva karman bhasmasat kuru.
Beautiful. Yogeshwar, I'm just delighted that you're seeing these similarities. I mean, I'm seeing them too constantly. This idea of that Jesus will take away your sins. Like when you have Holy Spirit in you, when you have true love of God in you, and you're following the right path, all of your sins kind of fall away, and you're born again. It's a similar idea to that. You're not carrying this load of everything that you've done. It's like, I visualize it as this entire load of all your actions. And what he's saying is that you can, by standing at the center, all these actions are peripheral actions, are things that are done at the periphery. By standing at the standing at the center, they burn it. And I love these different metaphors from verse to verse that are achieving this. All right, we're running a little bit short of time, but if you have any questions, not questions at this point, just comments. Let's do comments first on everything, and then we will do questions right at the end. If anybody would like to comment on what they get from this verse, you're welcome to do that. Otherwise, we're going to go to the next up. So let's go with Addie, followed by Douglas. Try to keep your comments brief so we can go through all the 42 verses. Go ahead, Addie.
Yeah, I agree with what Yoshiwa and you have stated about Jesus forgiving the sins. But in Buddhism, I'm just comparing this to Buddhism. If Buddhism is similar to Hinduism, for example, like the divine knowledge, believing in the divine knowledge can stop the effect of the actions. But in Buddhism, it's the doing part. It's not wanting to have karma in
Sure.
life. They would have to avoid a lot of stuff. They have to do a lot of stuff in order to have that stop, like the collection of the karmas.
Thank you.
But it looks like it's different here.
Thank you. Next up is Douglas. Douglas, very brief comment just on this verse, please.
Okay, so that's the whole thing. We have to, what are we gonna say? Keep studying, okay? Pre-Alzheimer's, okay? Knowing, we have a brain to use to come up, like it says in the Bhagavad Gita, the most important thing is reach enlightenment, okay? The Hindus that I talked to, the yogis, cut me right off.
Okay. Thank you. I want to keep it tightly focused on the verses, Douglas. Let's go ahead and let's go to the next one. We're going to have we are up to 1047, and I think this up to 42 is one unit, and I want to do it in a single sitting. So I would prefer to do that. Next up is going to be number 38. Let's start with Brian, Ambika, and Doug. Brian.
38. On earth, there is no purifier as great as this knowledge. When a man is made perfect in yoga, he knows its truth within his heart.
Thank you. Ambika. Ambika, you need to unmute.
There is nothing in the world to compare with knowledge in purity. The man who is perfected by yoga finds it of himself in the self by the course of time.
Thank you. Next up is Doug.
No purifier equal to knowledge is found here in the world. He who is himself perfected in yoga in time finds that knowledge in the self.
Wonderful. Yogeshwar, what does this verse mean?
So whatever we do, whichever karma we do, good or bad or everything, even the karma that takes us towards enlightenment, yes? It is not what is enlightenment, because enlightenment is a totally different experience, which will come by the course of time, yeah? And it is within us, but we have to remove all these delusions. So there is nothing in this world that comes to the level of enlightenment, to standing at the core of your own self. There's nothing in this world. So whether even though you're doing good things, basically, when we do good things, we feel that, oh yes, I am something. But even that is not in the lane, in the course of Jnana. because it is totally a different perspective here.
Wow.
And it comes by time.
Yogeshwar, can we do one thing? This is really beautiful. Can you go word by word and talk about each word and what each word means?
Okay. Nahi jnane na sadrisham pavitram iha vidyate. So there, nahi jnane na sadrisham. There is nothing that is, sadrisham means like Gnan. So there's nothing like Gnan. Pavitram iha vidyate. So iha means in this world or in the activities that you are doing. So in all the activities you're doing and in this world, there's nothing that is pavitra. Pavitra doesn't necessarily mean pure. It doesn't necessarily mean good only. Yeah. Pavitra even means something more than good. It is even beyond good and evil. So there's nothing like Gnan, and there's nothing as Pavitra as Gnan. I don't know a direct translation of English of Pavitra. So maybe you could suggest something.
No, I think, I mean, let's look at the various translations. I mean, I think purifying, I like the word purifying. Pavitra is like sacred. Sacred is one of the closest words I can think of. But there is, so nahi jnanena sadrusham pavitram iha vidyate. Yes, I think, you know, it's kind of combination of, can you, Brian, Ambika, and Doug, what word is used in your translations? Here it is using purifying. Nothing, there is nothing as purifying is what this is. Doug, what word is used in your translation?
Purifier.
Purifier. And Brian, what word is used in your translation?
Purifier.
Purifier. And Ambika?
We have, it's not purify, the man who is perfected by yoga.
No, that's the next sentence, the first sentence.
Without knowledge and purity. There's nothing in the
Purity.
world.
It's purity. Okay. Purity. Okay. So I think everything is like, they're using purity as a thing. Oh, can you do the translation of the second line? Or if you have any comments on the first line, you're welcome, of course.
Tat swayam yoga sansiddha. So a person who is practicing yoga, a person who is seated in yoga, not just practicing actually. So not only practicing, but a person who has reached the level of yoga. So for him, it will come by the course of time. And this is not some knowledge that you can acquire, like I've acquired it in 1 day or I've acquired it in 2 days, but it just comes by time because it is in there. If it is something out there, we can get it in a period of time. But if it is in here, there's no period that we can give. That if we have known it by words, doesn't mean we can get it by that time.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right. If there are any quick comments anybody has, you can make them. Otherwise, we'll go to the next verse.
Shrikant, very quickly, in Sanskrit, it says pavitra. And I think that's why we keep getting purify. Purity.
Yes, excellent point. All right, let's go to the next one, 39. Let's start with Brian. Go ahead.
39. The man of faith, whose heart is devoted, whose senses are mastered, he finds Brahman. Enlightened, he passes at once to the highest, the peace beyond passion.
Thank you. Ambika.
The man of faith with control over mind and senses, his heart and soul in that attains to knowledge. Having attained knowledge, he at once obtains supreme peace. He at once obtains supreme peace.
Wonderful. Doug?
He who possesses faith attains knowledge. Devoted to that knowledge, restraining his senses, having attained knowledge, he goes speedily to supreme peace.
Wonderful. I'm going to read the commentary and then I'm going to hand it over to Yogeshwar. Sri Krishna now introduces the concept of faith in the context of knowledge. Not all spiritual truths are immediately perceptible. Some of them can only be experienced after having attained sufficient elevation on the path. If we only accept what we can presently verify or comprehend, we will be bereft of any higher spiritual secrets. Faith helps us accept what we cannot understand at the present. Shankaracharya has defined faith as faith means firm confidence in the word of the Guru and the scriptures. When such faith is placed upon the wrong personality, it can lead to disastrous consequences. But when it is placed on a true Guru, it opens the pathway to eternal welfare. Okay, Yogeshwar, what do you think it means?
First thing is Shraddhavan Labhate Jnana. So a person who has faith gets to the level of none, because it is just like we want to go to a place that we have not known by our senses right now. So we should have faith in the person who has reached there, and that he will take us to the right path for us to reach there. Now, not only faith, now they're saying tatpara sanyatendriya. So not only faith, but it should be tatpara. Tatpara means you must be acting as well in that direction. You cannot only just have faith and sit. And then not only tatpara, but sanyatendriya, because we all want to get to another level. Yes, we are all trying to get to another level. Yes, but there are some things that are pulling us down. So sanyatendriya. So that means that we should get to a state using all these practices, consciousness, mindfulness, getting to the center. Now, when we reach somewhere, yeah, all these pullings that we are getting from the world, things that are pulling us in the world, they will all go away. So when that goes away, that is sanyatendriya. So all your energy basically will be put in one direction rather than it going in different tunnels. It's just like water. When it runs through one channel, it is so fast, but when you split it into 20 channels, it will now have its force lowered. And then they're saying that after attaining that enlightenment, it is not very far. You know, achirena, there are two meanings of that. So chirkar, if in Sanskrit, chir means long time. So achira means, so we could translate it in two ways. Achir could mean short time, yeah, but here it actually means in no time. Achirena adhikacha. So he attains shanti, which is peace. He attains peace in no time.
Wow. Yogeshwar, it's so beautiful to read Sanskrit after a long time. I studied Sanskrit, and the beautiful, I know Marathi very well, and Marathi is based on Sanskrit. So what happens is that all these roots, you know, the meaning from each of these roots really kind of, it's like explodes in the mind. Like, for example, some beautiful word like tatpar. Tatpar means you're, you know, in haste, you're ready, you're just ready to act, and you're ready to act instantly. So you have to be like that. So it's just beautiful, you know, reading all of this. I'm I'm going to read, let me see. Let's continue. Let's actually go through and let's finish up to 42, and then we will open it up to questions. So Brian, if you could read 40.
All right. 40. The ignorant, the faithless, the doubter goes to his destruction. How shall he enjoy this world or the next or any happiness?
Thank you. Next up is Ambika, followed by Doug. Ambika.
The ignorant who has not faith, the soul of doubt goeth to perdition. Neither this world, nor the supreme world, nor any happiness is for the soul full of doubts.
Doug?
The self of him who is ignorant and does not give faith, of him whose self-doubt is destroyed. Neither this world nor that beyond, nor happiness is for him whose self-doubts.
Wonderful. Yogeshwar, what is this verse saying?
So 3 types of people here. One person who is ignorant, who does not know. Now, these are all steps, yeah? If you are ignorant, yes, and you do not have faith, and then you doubt yourself, there is doubt. So that is one person. The other person could be ignorant, but he has faith, and still he doubts himself, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And then there is one person who is ignorant, yeah, may have some faith in himself, but still there's some, you know, there are all these doubts within his mind, and so there are all these types of people that Krishna is talking about. And even if one is left, like even if one quality is left within you, yeah, you won't get peace in this world. What about in the other world? So it's like normally when we are in like here, the main thing here, because Sanshaya is going to be taken to the 3 verses that are going to go down, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Sanshaya is a very great thing here. Sanshaya doesn't, because there's a very big difference between Sanshaya and Jigyasa in Sanskrit.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between asking a question and with Jigyasa, and asking a question with doubt, yeah, with Sanshaya. So
can I just use the let me give English words for it. Jnana is basically curious. So when you are curiously asking a question, you're genuinely wanting to know.
No.
Whereas some Sanshaya is basically doubting. So it is closest word in English is skeptic. So you're skeptical about everything. Is that a fair way of characterizing it, Yogeshwar?
Yes, that will be fair, actually. Mm-hmm. So those 2 distinctions should be made, whereby, you know, there's some places, there's some whereby we are seeing in this world that you should not even ask questions. So that's not what they're saying here. No, you should ask questions, but they should not be out of skepticism. They should be out of curiosity. That is what they're trying to say here. Yeah. And if a person, you know, a person who always doubts somebody or even doubts himself, even in his family life, yeah, there won't be any peace. He's always doubting the partner, or he's always doubting the children, or there won't be any peace. So there won't be peace in this world. Then how can there be peace in another world, or in the inner world that we're talking about?
Wonderful. Let's go to number 41. And once after we finish 42, we'll open it up for questions and comments again. Brian, if you could go ahead and read 41.
41. When a man can act without desire through practice of yoga, when his doubts are torn to shreds because he knows Brahman, when his heart is poised in the being of the Atman, no bonds can bind him. Still, I can see it, a doubt that lingers deep in your heart, brought forth by delusion. You doubt the truth of the living Atman.
Thank you. Go ahead.
One who has torn all doubt by knowledge, O Dhananjaya, and by yoga has given up all works, who is possessed of the self, him the works do not bind.
Doug.
Just 41 or both?
41.
Okay. Action does not bind him who has renounced action through yoga, whose doubt is cut away by knowledge, and who is possessed of the self, conqueror of wealth.
Yogeshwar, what does this mean?
So a person who has basically two things here, yoga and jnana. With yoga, you'll be able to get away from all this karma, all this cycle of karma that we're talking about, the good and the bad and all that. And with jnana, all the doubts within you, they will be taken away. So such a person who is seated at the center of himself will not be taken away by anything he sees in this world, or he won't be taken away by any karma. He won't be bound by right and wrong deeds according to this world, but he will be doing things out of his consciousness. He will be doing things. It is not that he will now be doing nothing. He will be doing things, but it will be out of the consciousness. It is like, in ancient India, we had this concept of Raja, the king.
Mm-hmm.
So if a king knows how to handle his whole territory, his whole country, then he can, like, if he doesn't know how to handle his country, he cannot handle his body. Yeah, he cannot handle his inner self at all. So it is step by step. And a person who is centered in himself, he is Atmavan. He doesn't have, like, if you're centered in yourself and you know how to control all your senses, then you also know how to control anything in this world. It is like if a scientist knows an atom, he knows an electron, a proton, then he knows each and everything in this world. So if you know yourself, you actually know everything in this world. You know how things go forth in the whole world, basically.
Wonderful, wonderful. I love the word Atmavanta. Like there is Dhanavanta, that means somebody who possesses knowledge. This is like one who possesses his own soul. So who has that? It's just beautiful. All right, let's go to the final of number 42, and then we'll open it up for comments and questions and discussion. Brian, if you could read 42.
42, still I can see it, a doubt that lingers deep in your heart, brought forth by delusion. You doubt the truth of the living Atman. Where is your sword discrimination? Draw it and slash delusion to pieces. Then arise, O son of Bharata. Take your stand in karma yoga.
Thank you. Next up is Ambika, followed by Doug.
Therefore, having cut asunder with the sword of knowledge this doubt, born of ignorance, lingering in the heart, stay in yoga, arise, O Bharata. Therefore, having cut asunder with the sword of knowledge this doubt, born of ignorance, lingering in the heart, stay in your yoga, arise, O Bharata.
Thank you. Doug.
Therefore, having cut away with thine own sword of knowledge, this doubt that proceeds from ignorance and abides in the heart, resort to yoga. Stand up, descendant of Bharata.
Thank you. Yogeshwar, can you talk about what it means?
So using the sword, now they're calling Gnan a sword here. So they're using different analogies to describe what actually it is. You know, using words actually come short. So you have to get a 364 view, but using words, whereby you can't know an experience using words. So you have to use different analogies of how we understand it, how a person who has not experienced it can understand how to get there and how it feels to be there. So they're using an analogy of a sword here. So using the sword of Gyan, all the doubts that are in your heart, which are made out of Agyan, they're all made out of Agyan. So all those doubts will be cut by this sword of Jnana. And once that has been done, you will be able to sit in yoga. You will be able to get to the state of Sthita Prajna that is being talked about here. It is there in that consciousness, when you're mindful, when you're conscious, that is when you will be able to do the right karma. That's why he says that yogam atishta. So sit in yoga, and then uttishta bharata, and then do your karma. Yeah. So it's not just one thing that know yourself, but know yourself, and this is a part of knowing yourself as well. So when you know yourself, you'll be able to do the right thing in the world. You'll be able to do your own karma, your swadharma that is talked about in the world.
Wonderful. Thank you, Yogeshwar. Now I'm going to open it up to anybody who wants to make comment on this entire section, 33 to 42. Let me start with Doug, and then anybody else who wants to talk about what they get from this entire chapter 4, verses 33 to 42. Doug.
One thing that strikes me is the use of faith or faithfulness, the second suggesting a faithful practice as opposed to just faith, which is something you're supposed to have. And so I think the knowledge comes from a practice and a use of these tools, which then prove themselves or they don't. And you test them and find out if they work or they don't. And the skeptic is somebody who says, why bother practicing? It's nonsense. So he never even makes the experiment because he just doesn't believe it could lead to anything. So I think this idea of faith is related to faithful practice. And that's come up in a number of words that people have explicated. So
Wonderful.
Thank you to all of you.
Thank you. Next up is Evanik.
Yeah, what I got out of this whole section and this meetup tonight is to getting to know yourself, who you truly are, who you are at the center, who you are at the core of yourself. And I think what I got is that it's key, because if God is at the center of who you are, when you get to know who you are, you get to also know who God is, or, the higher power is. So I think, and especially the part about burning away the things that no longer fit you or doesn't lead you onto the righteous path. It's the same thing with sacrificing. It's the same thing with anything else. You have to sacrifice those things. And I think what Yogeshwar was saying earlier when he was talking about, when you want something, when you still desire something from the outside world, and kind of like burning that away because that's not who you are anymore, yet you still want to hold on to it. I think that's key. So I think that was really what I got out of it. So thank you, everyone.
Wonderful. Jason, what did you get from this section?
Yeah, I think that's very interesting, because in the Western tradition, we constantly argue, to get the to know things, the divine knowledge. We always argue in the Western philosophy, argue the faith or by reason. And this chapter, it looks like is teach. What I learned is start from faith, then you use wisdom, and then you will reach the peace, which I think use the word shanty, I think. So it's interesting from compare with Western philosophy. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Marco, what did you get?
Yeah, for me, it's sort of like it feels like especially like this letting go and this sort of like, giving yourself over to the guru. It sort of feels like you're this like walking meditation basically. And it's sort of like, you're shedding all this, your ego, your anxieties. And so, yeah, that's what I got.
Wonderful. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to read this part again and make a few comments as we go along. So first comment I want to make is something that is common to all the three works we are studying: the Gospel of John, Tao Te Ching, and Bhagavad Gita. You can see how much metaphors are being used and how beautifully. Tao Te Ching is full of metaphors. Be like water. It just goes on and on, be like a baby. And just with these very simple metaphors, it brings all these deep things. In Gospel of John, we're talking about the living water, putting a fountain of love at the core of your being. I am the bread of life. And here we saw so many different metaphors. And each, so as I go through this, I want to just highlight what power metaphors have of talking about things which are hard to talk about, because at a given time, each of the metaphors is capturing some aspect of knowledge. So one of the most important points here is that knowledge in this tradition is very different concept than knowledge in the modern Western tradition. So in some ways, the knowledge here is very similar to the knowledge in the biblical, in the gospel sense. For example, the idea that you have faith first, and that will allow you to know better, is definitely part of the gospel. And I see that in Gospel of John as well. So I'm going to just read it and make comments as we go along. The sacrifice of knowledge, O Parantapa, is greater than any material sacrifice. Knowledge is that in which all this action culminates. Not any lower knowledge, but the highest self-knowledge and God knowledge. So this is what I like about the translation of Sri Aurobindo. This actually names that this is not any kind of lower knowledge about the physical world. We're talking about knowledge, the highest self-knowledge and God knowledge. Learn that by worshiping at the feet of the teacher, by questioning and by service, the men of knowledge who have seen. So this is again the seen part, that it's the experienced, lived part, not those who know merely by intellect. The true principles of learning, the tattva is principle, will instruct thee in knowledge. Possessing that knowledge, thou shalt not fall again into the mind's ignorance, O Pandava, for by this thou shalt see all existence without exception in the self and then in me. So again, this is center and periphery And the concept of Sthita Prajna keeps coming back. You're standing at the center, and by standing at the center, you're getting away from delusions by being attached to the periphery, and you are speaking to the core of everything. Even if thou art the greatest doer of sin, beyond all sinners, thou shalt cross over all the crookedness of evil in the ship of knowledge. This is the liberating, when you're standing at the core, it liberates you from the weight of all the actions that you have taken away from the center. As a fire kindled turns to ashes its fuel, so the fire of knowledge turns all work to ashes. So he's saying that it's like light. Outside is darkness. When you're standing in the light itself, the core of light at the center of your being, everything kind of disappears. I'm using a different metaphor, but it's similar, that it falls away. It falls away. There is nothing in the world equal to the purity of knowledge. The man who is perfected by yoga finds it of himself in the self by the course of time. So he is standing at the center. Who has faith, who has conquered and controlled the mind and the senses, who has fixed his whole conscious being on the supreme reality, he attains knowledge. And having attained knowledge, he goes swiftly to the supreme peace. The ignorant who has not faith, the soul of doubt, goeth to perdition. Neither this world nor the supreme world nor any happiness is for the soul full of doubts. He who has destroyed all doubts by knowledge and has by yoga given up all works and is in possession of the self. So it's kind of going back to the center again and again, is not bound by his works. Therefore, having cut asunder with the sword of knowledge, this doubt that has arisen out of ignorance and abides in the heart, resort to yoga, do thou stand up, O Bharata. That again, see, he's saying so far, remember that this is a big question that Arjun had brought up, that if you think that Jnana Yoga is so great, why are you asking me to act? Again, he's now talking, he repeats that same point again. He's saying, this is the greatness of Jnana Yoga, and now act. So what he's saying is that Jnana Yoga is the core. The actions are the result of those things. So even when you have that, you still act. So that's what I got. I just wanted to recap it for everybody. Now I'm going to open it up for any comments of what you got from this entire, from 33 to 42. Go ahead and type exclamation mark if you'd like to give your comments. All right, let's see. Okay, so then let me ask you, what was it like going verse by verse? Do you find it to be, do you find that you're getting more when you are going verse by verse or less? What did you think? Evanik?
I got more out of it going verse by verse. I thought I really got to the essence of it, and hearing different people talk about it, I think I definitely got more out of it going verse by verse.
Wonderful. Anybody else? You can.
Hello?
Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about
Douglas. Yeah. Did you get? Or what did you get more verse by verse.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to read the book again. It was very good. I gotta comment. I gotta give you an A. Okay, you do such a presentation. You know that you should be proud of it. Okay, that really a lot of people get a lot of things out of it. I had a couple other people listening the other night. Okay, so thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Douglas. Thank you.
And yeah,
Go ahead.
I know the whole thing we talk about is that it shows, you know, there's different types of yoga. People can get a book on, you know, there's a hatha yoga.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yoga and all these other yogas.
Thank
so
you.
The complexion of the Bhagavad Gita is like the Bible for them, you know, the Hindu, which is good.
Thank you.
And I appreciate the way, I really do, you know. I would love to have you come if I had my class again and speak to my class if you were down here, you know, type of that type of come.
You know, Douglas, this is far more interesting than a usual class. The quality of people here, the range of their experience, the context that they bring is far richer. The second thing is that I have to, you know, the thing is that one of the things I have to keep things closely on the topic, because that is what really creates magic. So excuse me if I have to kind of keep making sure that everybody keeps on topic, because that is the thing that I've found that creates an enormous amount of value for everybody. So I have to be sometimes the bad guy to interrupt people and to try to keep things you know, really focused, because that is what is producing the magic. And I really appreciate that you understand that. Thank you, Douglas. Next up is going to be Doug, David, and Brian. Doug. Doug, you're on mute.
The verse by verse, I think, is good. Even then it becomes sometimes sentence by sentence, and then word by word when a key word is maybe more of a state of being or an action. I mean, to find the subtleties of the word is really helpful. And some people who haven't spoken have been doing running commentaries on the words, Sudhi, and I think that's been very valuable. The other thought I have is it keeps making me think of the breath as one of the main things in meditation practice, which the Gita mentions later, but it's that thing that allows us to burn fuel, the oxygen that allows us to metabolize the body, which is like the log that burns. And so focusing on the breath, which we do when we're conscious and when we're unconscious, it keeps going, I think is a very simple state. And the more you commit to that, then sometimes you hit a certain state, which then very quickly takes you to another state. But sometimes you have to commit to the practice for a long time. And I found when my practice got to be 40 to 50 minutes a day, not right now, but at some point in my life, suddenly my mind began to speed up. I just leapt very quickly to a very different state. And so I think this really sort of keeps circling around that idea of faithful practice, you know.
Wonderful. I wanted to give a thumbs up to Sudhi. Sudhi, I really like what you've been putting in the chat. Would you like to talk a little bit about your experience with the meetup, your experience with Sanskrit, the words, anything you want to say?
Yeah, thanks for putting up with my nonsense chatter all the time. I went to a boarding school, and every day before lunch and dinner, we had to read verses from the Bhagavad Gita, and only then we were supposed to eat food. So I've been reading this from a long time, but then I had a break in between. So definitely there is a Buddhist saying, it's not always good to listen to your own prayer. You should also try to listen to the chantings of people in the other temple. So you get a better perspective on things. So that's the reason why I decided to join the group, not just
to know what I understand, to also learn from others and also share what I understand. So definitely thankful to you all, and yep, looking forward.
Wonderful. Welcome, Sudhi. And folks, if you have not joined 52 Living Ideas meetup, please go ahead and do that, because we do these meetups every day. We are doing this series on Gospel of John, Bhagavad Gita, and Tao Te Ching in parallel. And something really magical is beginning to happen when we start to see these connections between them. Next up is going to be David, followed by Brian. David.
Yes, Shrikant. Yeah, I think that verse by verse is very interesting and insightful. My one comment is to not rush it. I mean, I understand you want to sort of get a concept, but I think that it's helpful to not try to cover too many verses at once.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. But I wanted to finish this particular one because it's like I'm kind of going concept by concept. I'm looking at, this entire sequence really looks at the value of knowledge. It's saying something about knowledge. And I just wanted to make sure that people had a concept of it, but I will have to figure out how to do that. And talking about verse by verse, because I know Sanskrit and I learned Sanskrit as a kid, this is actually a very magical experience for me, because there will be words there. And I can kind of, it's like, my English is not bad, but I don't have the same experience in English that I have when I'm looking at Sanskrit or Marathi. Because what happens is that all the roots, the way all these words are put together, I can see that. It all comes to me as I'm reading it. So it's incredible. So if you think verse by verse, each of the words there and how it is composed of different roots is telling you so much. So at some point, I'll take something really beautiful. We'll take something really beautiful and go word by word. I think we'll get something, because it's really, Sanskrit is a very interesting language. Very powerful. It's the closest one I can see in the West is Latin. It's like that. It's like you can use it in any order. You can, all these roots that are there. So we have to do something on Sanskrit at some point. Next up is, I lost track here, Brian. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, I just was going to say, I thought it was very useful to go through verse by verse. There's a whole lot of concepts, and going and discussing each of them makes it a lot clearer. And I also feel like I'll remember a lot more with this approach than if it was faster, because then you don't remember it after a while. But now I feel like with all talking about the different symbols and the fire and the boat and all that, I can retain that.
Wonderful, thank you. Now I want to just talk to Yogeshwar. I want to say that firstly, I'm delighted that you're coming to meetups other than this one. Firstly, I am just it's been amazing to have you talk. But just before that, I think Tejal had a point. Then I want to talk about this comparison of different meetups. Tejal, go ahead.
Whenever I go through the verses, or whenever I learn the Gita in my academics, I feel like it somehow expands our mind and the level of thinking, because it gives the clarity, and somehow I feel like it's a proper meaning to life, because we escape an existentialism here, because the existentialism is the only problem we all are facing right now. So what is the source we can completely rely on to find out an exact meaning? So it is a belief system where we can rely on the divine consciousness where he is saying that you are my child and rely on me and listen to me and do your karma by any mean, any source, maybe from the Jnana Yoga or Bhakti Marga. So even though the sources are different, but the knowledge we get and the enlightened me gate is proper and clear without any doubt, because it's a doubtless world.
Thank you.
When
Thank you,
we
Teju.
attain enlightenment. Thank you.
Thank you. Yogeshwar, I was saying I'm delighted not only that you come to this meetup, because the amount of value you add to this meetup is just incredible. Second, but I'm particularly happy that you come to the other meetups, the Gospel of John, the Tao Te Ching, and so what are you getting from those meetups?
Basically, like you said, that there is some magic happening between all these meetups, and it is truly like, you can't say it in words, but you just feel it, that there is something, that there are all these differences that we see in all these religions, all these cultures in the world, and then when you read the original texts, you see that they're all coming from one root, they're all coming from one place, and they're all combining somewhere. And then you as an individual, you find out that everyone has been talking about only one thing since old days, like since the time of creation, or whatever you can say. So everyone has been talking about one thing, but the way they express it or the way they practice it may be different. But in the original texts, or how it was described originally, you can just see that everything is just one.
Yeah, that's beautifully put. And I think this kind of your emphasis on original text is crucial, because like these texts look very different when encased in all the rituals, all the traditions, all the habits, all the interpretations, and and then they seem very different because they are all these encased things, and their ways of, the way in which a particular culture interprets a particular thing. But by going to the source itself, going to the original text, the commonality is, I mean, it's everywhere. It's so deep and so powerful and so moving, and they speak to each other, and they are talking about same things in a very deep way, but each has its own voice. So each expresses it in a different way. So it's like hearing this band of amazing musicians playing their own instruments, making music. So thank you very much. Thank you, Yogeshwar, and thank you everybody for being a part of this. It's really, really special. I think we're learning so much together. So really appreciate that. Thank you, folks, and good night, everybody. Bye.